Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Spiders Sound Off. This is Tom.
And this is Porter.
You know, with changes on the women's side coaching, that's what we're here to mainly talk about today. I thought we had to change up our setup a little bit. So we're trying some new camera angles.
It's just phase 1 of season 2.
Yeah, that's right. We're still in season 1. If you hear any construction going on, we've hired a very professional construction crew to redo our Henrico studios. But we are here mainly because I got some good news today that
36 hours of good news.
And we'll start with the biggest news is that we did fill our women's head coach position, which with Alisa Kresge.
That's a great hire, by the way.
Super
excited about that one.
Came from Vermont, if you haven't heard. Kind of after, I guess 3 of the last 4 years, took her team to the NCAA tournament, and that's a league where you got to win their conference tournament to get to the NCAA tournament. So that's 3 out of 4 years they won the conference tournament, got to the NCAAs, and almost arguably as impressive is the year they didn't get to NCAAs. They went to the women's NIT and went to the Final Four or the women's NIT and lost to St. Louis, which is kind of ironic, an A-10 school. But that's 4 years in a row postseason for Vermont. She's been I guess she played at Marist.
Yes.
So she's a former player, which I think is always nice. Like they can
not only a former player, a very successful former player. She led the program in assists, averaged about 5.5 assists a game her last 3 years.
I think she still has the all-time assist record.
All-time assist record there. They, while she was a player, made 3 NCAA tournaments, including one Sweet 16. So this is a lady who knows how to succeed in the tournament. So.
And when you talk about the Vermont program and you talk about her as a player, 3 years she was the MAC Defensive Player of the Year.
I think we're going to see a defensive identity on this new Spiders team, which is great for like Rain Wright, who's a great defensive player. If we could somehow get Newell back out of the portal, I mean, she could take another huge step forward. That'd be phenomenal.
So talking a little bit about Vermont, so we've tried to do some research in the last few hours when that announcement happened. Like they are offensively very low turnover team, kind of very methodical offense. It's an efficient offense, and they shoot well from 3. But the one stat you look at, how many teams there are in Division I? I think it's 363. I looked 365.
Well, in the men's it's 365.
If you look at their rank on tempo, last year was 360.
So they play slow.
So they play again,
old school.
The Vermont team played slow, low turnover, super efficient on offense, but
super aggressive,
but very slow and a very aggressive defense. I don't think they cause lots of turnovers. This isn't another version of Havoc, but it's like kind of fundamentally super strong defensively, getting out on the shooters.
So what you're saying is a George Mason Richmond game next year could go 29-27.
It could. I do think she's a type of coach who would love. I think of. I'll do it this way. When you looked at our team last year, there are a lot of games where there were like 3 quarters that were even, and then there was a quarter where we scored like 23 points and the other team scored 10, and that's how we ended up winning by 15 to 20 points. It wouldn't surprise me. I haven't looked this much into Vermont, but it wouldn't surprise me if they have games where they're like holding the opponent to 2 points in a quarter. They may only score 12, but that's like their dominant quarter because they just shut teams down. Which on one hand, like I think it's going to be nice to see a team that can win defensive battles. Like if 2 years ago we played Texas pretty competitively. I think last year Texas and VCU weren't competitive in the second half, and Texas and TCU. I'm sorry, Texas and TCU, but like those are teams, and I don't know if we're going to get to play those exact teams again. But at some point, like to pull an upset on like a top 10 team, like defense is going to have to get you there. Like it's hard to like try to outshoot. I mean, we saw Nebraska. Like if the strategy was to outshoot Nebraska in the tournament, like that's really hard to do. They played incredibly on the offensive side and had all year. So it's like it'll be nice to have kind of something new to look at where it's like the way she would coach against Nebraska would be like, our defense has to win the game, not that we have to outshoot them, which was obviously we couldn't outshoot a team that was kind of that efficient.
If you remember our hastily released episode middle of the week where we were kind of looking over a list that was
the emergency pod,
as we were releasing, we were talking about the hires that were reported to, or the people we were reported to be interested in. She was one of the two we endorsed as a go forward. She looks like a really good coach. So super
from the list. I didn't let you dig into anymore
from the list, right? So like
tweet,
I love that we got her. I think it's an A- hire. I would say A+ is hard to do when the portal has started and you've got, you're back against the wall, right?
Yeah, this was not a job we've been looking to fill for the last month during the season, and talk to everybody.
To me, this lady is a winner, and she knows how to win. Let's go back to playing career. She was a winner as a player. She was an assistant coach at Marist, where they made, I think, the postseason 6 out of 8 years. So she was a winner as an assistant coach. She's a winner as a head coach. She took over from a guy, I think his name was Chris Day. There's a story there, which maybe, O'Connor can dig into with his professional reporting, but there's something happened with Chris Day at Vermont. She took over from him.
I think they were she took what the article I read was like a program that like had multiple years of like really poor winning percentage.
There was some other little nugget out there, but I didn't have enough time to research.
But I guess she didn't take over a team that had won the American East 3 years.
They were
in a
struggling.
row. Yeah,
and Chris Day, by the way, is now an assistant coach at LaSalle, and he's still on the roster, or on the coaching staff there. So she will get to play either her guy who hired her or the guy she took over for, whichever, 1 or 2 times a year now. And by the way, most of LaSalle's team is in the portal, and they have 2 kids in the portal that are phenomenal, including Mac Tuna, who I think was the defensive player of the year in the A-10, and then Connor is another one. Both are juniors coming into the portal. So it's a good hire from the fact that she was a winner as a player, a winner as an assistant coach, a winner as a head coach. She plays a very defensive, aggressive style, as you mentioned. So it'll be different than what we've seen with Roussel. Different can be good when you win. Yeah. And so I think this was an A- hire. I think under a lot of pressure to get it right, and a lot of and a quick turnaround because the portal is open. Yeah. I give Hart credit. This was a good one.
One other stat I looked at, and this is last year's team. I'm sure every team's going to be different in this regard, but she had 4 players last year who averaged 80% or more of the minutes. So if you're thinking about like her, and I looked at the year before, was similar. It wasn't that extreme, but she's not a coach who has 10 players who are all playing 15 to 20 minutes. That's not the philosophy. It's kind of it's a and I would say more traditional philosophy.
That could have been the personnel she had too. Like we don't know. We didn't watch a lot of Vermont women's basketball last year, so it could have been her personality that dictated that. I mean, I think the thing that is exciting is she presumably will have a lot more money than Vermont has to throw at women's basketball. Yeah. She's in a better conference. She was in the top 90 in the Bar Torvik the last 2 years, which is not easy to do from any conference, much less the American East. Yeah. And so that puts her right now, in my mind, on the upper half of all coaches in the Atlantic 10, because there's not a lot of coaches that can say they were top 92 years in a row in the Atlantic 10.
Or in the NCAA tournament.
Or in the NCAA
from
tournament
their prior
3 years
program.
in a row, right? So like that. So she's a good get for us. Now, it's all going to be about how do you build the coaching staff around her and how do you build the roster. I think that'll be the interesting thing to figure out. And I'd love to get her on the show to understand what her philosophy is, but I'm sure she's going to be busy for the near future, making calls, trying to lock up players, trying to lock up recruits, whether they be Vermont recruits or Richmond recruits. I have no idea.
One thing I did like, these are like when you're trying to read the tea leaves, is that, when U of R today put out their press release, they also put it on Instagram. And I saw just like when the last hour, Rain Wright and Anisha Scott like reposted it. So like, so those are like, I'm reading between the lines. Like it's,
hearing that.
You don't do that if you're definitely leaving. Now that doesn't mean they're definitely staying, but it was good.
Neither of those guys is in the portal.
Right.
So, that's good. So, I mean, in the portal, we got Manthe, we got Newell, we got Jada Green.
No one else yet, which is nice. But
I like the fact that at least the players on the team are going to have conversations with the new coach about staying, and hopefully we can lock everybody else up and get Newell back, because Newell's one of the best defensive players we've seen. And so
one thing we had talked about earlier is like whenever coaches change schools, there's always a question: do they have players to bring with them? So we looked a little bit at Vermont's roster. She had a lot of seniors last year. There wasn't like an obvious, here's the superstar from the American East who was a sophomore, let's go get her. But then got me thinking, there are other schools in the American East that have people on the portal that are sophomores that might have scored, like someone from like NJIT averaged like 15 points a game who was a sophomore. So like she'll know that conference better than we will and better than Roussel will. So she'll know, like, are there players there that are worth talking to? So there may be an angle of, we may see not only a recruit or two that she had coming to Vermont, but maybe some American East stars that she can bring over to a bigger conference.
I have a very important first step she's got to take when we finally get her on the pod.
Yeah.
She needs to bring us Hetty Topper. It's one of the best IPAs in America. It's straight out of Vermont. You can't buy it outside of Vermont. And you will win a lot of favor with Spider Sound Off by providing us Hetty Topper.
I do think you can get Hetty Topper in Richmond now.
Can you really?
I do think
okay,
you
well
can.
then,
not all the time.
Why have you not gotten me some?
I don't
That's
know.
all I'm gonna ask.
Wow. So anyway, before we talk about some of the men's news, like Porter, I know you're out this week, and that's why we're kind of doing this pod maybe today versus Sunday, so we may miss a little bit of news. But I heard this rumor that your trip this week was because you were putting yourself on the podcasting portal, and you were going to be visiting other podcasts. Is that over the next week? Is that true? I don't know.
Let's just say the studio behind me was the step one in retaining the podcast talent.
That's why I got to do whatever I can to keep you here.
It's not a high compensated position, as we know. Right?
Hey, you could get 3 times the compensation from another program, and it would still be 0.
2 Hetty Toppers, by the way, go a long way at winning this guy's favor. So.
Hey, 2 other things before we get to the men's news. So one, Monday is a WNBA draft. So fans, as this pod will probably be just getting out, then we're not going to obviously have news on that, but check it out Monday night. Hopefully we see Maggie get drafted.
I think we will.
Talk second round.
Yeah.
If you didn't know, there are not as many WNBA teams as there are NBA teams. So the second round could be like your 16th or 17th picked because the league's just not as big. They have a couple expansion teams in the draft as well.
Yes.
So anyway, so that's Monday. And the last thing, a little bit of me admitting my faults and a little bit of apology to a friend of ours.
What?
So those who listened to the last pod saw how shocked I was that Porter was mentioning these D3 coaches. And, I made some statements that were a little bit over the top based on, really, I think my mind was more thinking, the jump from Division 3 to 1 if you're a player. Versus from a coach perspective. And there are lots of D3 coaches who are been successful. I do think the right step for a D3 coach is to get the D1 experience at a smaller conference or an assistant coach experience anywhere before Richmond goes to hire them. But there are at some point I made a comment like, don't know what they're doing. Which was intended to be like the worst case scenario, not a blanket statement.
So what you're saying is your phone blew up a little bit after the pod.
Yeah, I might have had some feedback about.
I did see like a mutual, not the one that you're apologizing to, which I'm sure he will appreciate that you're putting this out there. But the other, somebody we both know also, we were a separate thread where I think there were 12 or so coaches thrown your way that succeeded with that jump. So you were catching it from multiple angles.
I did like at some point. Which coach was it? Was it Quinnipiac or some coach that you were like, we need to get that person? Then I looked it up and I'm like, that coach retired.
Yeah, like I said, we put that episode out hastily, and the goal was, let's go over the 5 names that we're seeing in the Twitter sphere, and then let's come up with some new names. And so we were looking across resumes quickly. I looked at as much D1 as I could get through on the East Coast, and then I focused a little bit on. I actually looked up some of the assistants on South Carolina, UCLA as well. But then I focused on D3, the top winner. So we were really putting that out fast. There's some, like I talked about the Princeton coach. They've already taken a new job. So there were some things that were clearly not well researched. But I think the good news is when we got to Kresge, we called her a winner.
Yeah.
I think I pointed out she's won 100 games in the last 4 years or something.
Yeah, I think she's the all-time winningest coach at Vermont.
So I'm like, this is an example of somebody we need to recruit.
Win.
So like, we got one that we wanted, and that's fantastic. And well done by John Hart for making that happen.
Okay, on the men's side, our last pod, or maybe it was
you never did say you were sorry, by the way.
I did say I was sorry.
No, I said I need to say something about some. I don't think you said I'm sorry. So can you say I apologize for my D3 statements? Just to say it one time.
Didn't I just say it?
I think you kind of talked around it without apologizing.
Well, I apologize.
Thank you. All right.
Okay, so on the men's side, I think when we potted last, or maybe the one before that, we knew, Argabright was the first news that he was returning. Then the next big news, which I know made Porter really excited, was Colin Tanner announced he's coming back.
Hey, I like Colin. I think Colin is a great role player on this team. I don't think, Colin is a 30-minute game guy, but in the right role, I think Colin is an excellent player on this team.
I think Rob, favorite player.
I think, Rob certainly is excited about the news.
Okay, but the real big news is that we got our first player off the portal, which is Jamie Kaiser Jr. You're excited about that, aren't you?
Before we talk about Kaiser, let's talk about Mojo coming back. That's actually really good. So Maurice Joseph is coming back as an assistant coach, presumably because he's comfortable with Mooney and he's a great recruiter. And I'm guessing there was some ability to go and get players that we wanted, so involved in this too. So that's just a guess. But like with Maurice Joseph, right after that came this player from Butler, who's I think going to be a really good fit for us.
And if you didn't know, Butler's coach retired, Thad Matta, and was he the Xavier coach when we had the fight with Xavier in the tunnel? We talked about that earlier, but yeah. So Jamie Kaiser, who's somewhere between 6'4" and 6'6", I've seen both. Who's a shooting guard, small forward.
I have him listed at 6'6".
Yeah.
I think, he could start at the 2 or the 3 for us. He was rated kind of equally between Bart Torvik and Evan Mia. His rating was good, not great. I mean, he was like a 2.72 in BPR on Evan Mia, 2.3 in PRPG on Bart Torvik. That put him in the pretty good company. Like, would have been a starter for us last year.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, not in that like Robbie Avila 3.9 rating type level. But still, I'm talking about a player who should play a lot of minutes for us and is going to be the starter at either the 2 or the 3. I like his size.
Yeah.
We don't typically have a 2 that's 6'6", so he's a really nice 3-point shooter from a looks like gets the shot off pretty easily from 3, and I think that's important as Argabright runs the point to have somebody that when you kick it to doesn't need to find a way to get around somebody because he's 6'6", he can shoot over them, right? So I think that's going to be a really nice dynamic to see. I think overall this is the second of what I'll call 5 key moves we need to make, right? Well, number 1 was Argabright. Number 2 is this. And then I think there's 3 more key moves that still have to come.
Yeah, I'll say what I like about him is, I think even if he doesn't go from a 10-point scorer to a 15-point scorer, like he's a rebounder and he's a defensive player.
Yes.
Kind of, I think he led their team in steals,
yes.
Plays good defense. So that's one of those, at a minimum, he's going to be a good defender, a good rebounder for a guard. And then the question is, does he go as he develops, because he's going to be a junior from an eligibility standpoint, can he take that next step from being a almost double-digit scorer to being 15 points a game? And I think we'll have the opportunity to do it here. It's just a question of, does it get more efficient in his shooting?
We needed to get longer on the perimeter. We needed a guy who, when you get longer, you don't sacrifice foot speed. So, you can actually cover, the 6'3" guard that you're in front of. And I think, you needed somebody that can stretch a defense that, can shoot over top of a 6'3" guard easily. Right. And so I think this is a really good, we talked about roster construction in past episodes. This is a good guy to pair with Argabright. Like I said,
don't do the ingredient recipe sort of.
What I'm going to say is we're still not a postseason team. We have, like I said, we need 3 more meaningful moves to become somebody that we can get excited about as a team.
Well, good news
is a very good step.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, there's probably no one in the A10 VCU's got, and St. Louis have a bunch of guys coming back. But out of those two, there's all these teams are kind of in flux right now. So we'll see what happens. The one little nugget I got when I was researching Kaiser, I saw that he played. He's from Burke, Virginia.
Yes,
so kind of Northern Virginia, and he played for New World AAU.
Okay.
You know who else played for New World?
I do not.
Aidan Argabright.
Really?
And I got, so Aidan Argabright posted on the announcement.
Did they play together?
Well, they're 2 years apart.
Okay.
And AAU is typically like, let's say, 7 or 14 to 18, like they were 16. They have different level teams. So, and I saw when Argabright kind of reposted that Kaiser was coming, he said like, "Let's go fam." And I was like, I wonder, like that could just be a saying, but it made me think like, oh, they're both from Northern Virginia. Because remember before he came to John Marshall, that's where Argabright was really his home. Kaiser went to IMG Academy for his like prep. So they both took played locally freshman, sophomore year, and then went elsewhere for their high school, but the same AAU club. So if they didn't ever play together, I think they probably knew people who knew each other.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting. And that's how this happens, right? Like if you're on the portal, you're like, there's a part of course, money is probably number one, but number two is like, do I want to play for this coach? And do I already have connections so I'm not like playing with 10 strangers when I show up? And so it's a small community in the grand scheme of things. These players tend to know each other.
I kind of think, and I mean, I might be crazy for saying this, I kind of think mojo is going to be equally important to our success as Kaiser. And what I mean by that is mojo has a history of being attached to pretty high level players. And we need that, right? We need that guy who can recruit, the top 100 talent. And I think he's got that reputation. So I'm super excited about both of those guys. Like I said, we need 3 more good pieces of news to go with it to have a team. One piece of news that broke since our last episode, Jaden Daughtry is in the portal.
Yeah, that's right.
That actually kind of hurt. That one stung. I mean, we heard it when I interviewed Aidan Argabright. He said he thought he was going to return. I'm disappointed we didn't keep Daughtry. I mean, I know, obviously the system has to fit both from a minutes perspective and a play style perspective. But I kind of wanted JD to be part of the team. I really like his game, and I think he's a good player.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there's potential there with him to become better, and so you want those guys who can do that. I do hope, and this is really kind of a hope, because like you said, we've got 3 other moves, so things will shift. But I'd love to see Robinson get more time next year. Yep. And obviously,
Harper.
Kaiser is going to be that kind of small forward potential position. And so I think that's where kind of Daughtry and Robinson are probably best served, although sometimes they're playing the 4, and gosh, at some point they had to play the 5 because we had no centers. Yep. So I can see there's a little bit of like, I can see where Daughtry would imagine his time might not go from 20 minutes to 30 minutes, and if he's looking for that, and money wise, go somewhere else.
It could be very much money related. If you get a really dynamic big, especially, you could do a smaller lineup now because of Kaiser, right? So you could go with a big Kaiser, J. Rob, Will Harper, Argabright, and then you got 5'11" and whoever the big is in the middle, and then you got 3 guys are in that 6'4" to 6'6" range, and all of them are decent rebounders, right? Yeah. So that actually could be an interesting style.
One of the freshmen is big, right?
Hominick's a big dude. He's
no. I'm sorry. One of the freshmen coming in.
2 of them are actually.
No, I can't remember their name. Caldwell's the one he's got some potential.
Mooney said he would be ready to play as a freshman. Yeah. So he's big.
He's kind of like 6. He's like a power forward. He's skinny guy, but he's tall. He's not a center, but he could be someone to play.
If he was skinny or not, but I know he's tall. I think he's like 6'8". And then I think you got Hominick who looked good when we watched practice. I mean, he's still a freshman.
Yeah, he's got some
redshirted, so he's got some more work to do. But I mean, like those guys to me are going to be kind of key role players to give you your depth. You need a guy who is an established threat to come in and help. You need 1 through 5. You got Aidan, you got Kaiser. I think you need 3 more starters, and then you have Will, Donovan Richardson, J. Rob, Hominick, all these other guys kind of like pushing to be the 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, on that team. I mean, I think you're right. I would like when you're at some point you're divvying out money, right? Like I'd probably rather have 2 great players.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then the third could be kind of maybe the 4th of the 4 that we get, and that gives maybe someone who's going to compete with Harper.
Yeah, I mean, if you spend all your money to get one super stud big who was the best player available in a certain level, then I think you could certainly have J. Rob, Will Harper, and Donovan Richardson, all those guys fighting for the 4 and the 5, or the ability to play as other starters. Because you got 3 really established players at that level who are really good.
So a lot has happened. There's still a lot to happen. We'll probably do another pod in a week or so, depending on the news.
We'll be back at some point in time,
and hopefully you're no one's grabbed you off the portal.
Nobody has taken me off the portal.
You're moving to UVA to just follow like coach,
like a heady topper. Will go a long way to locking this deal up, right?
Right. So a lot to I'm sure while we have the draft on Monday, we'll have some more portal news on both teams. I suspect we'll get I would hope in the next week we know what the staff looks like for Alisa's team, for Coach Kresge's team, and maybe Newell comes off the portal and comes back, or we replace her with some other players.
You know how we feel about Newell. She's a great player, and I think under this coach, who's a defensive-minded coach, she could even take another step forward. So I think it could be really, really good. But I mean, she put the thank you farewell statement out on the Twitter sphere, so I think she probably is. Got someplace in mind. Where she wants to go,
you're probably right. Okay, well, until next time, from opposite sides of the camera, this is Tom.
And this is Porter.
And this is Spiders sounding off.
See ya.